if we just start and look at the prevalence of or the existence of drugs that exist for diabetes and for weight loss, there's actually no drugs on the market that target fat cells for weight loss, right? Even though our fat cells is where all of our excess weight is stored, when we gain weight. And it also secretes hormones that regulate our appetite. So
yes.
So leptin, you mentioned this earlier. This is produced exclusively in fat cells. This is something that tells us, that's supposed to tell us that, we're full after we've eaten and decrease our appetite, right? So, the other sort of major hormone that's coming from adipose tissue is adiponectin, right? And so adiponectin is, again, exclusively produced by fat, and it's something that increases the effect of insulin within fat and with other tissues in our body to take up glucose after meals. So both of those things are produced exclusively in fat, and it turns out the two things that change the most in terms of markers in our blood that can predict diabetes years before we develop diabetes, it's those two things, right? So leptin ends up being elevated and adiponectin is decreased. And that's, like I said, predictive of diabetes years before you would see the actual symptoms in terms of blood glucose, and they're produced exclusively in fat.
And carbohydrate drives a lot of that in the diet, but I want to focus in, because that one's easy for me to say because I'm a low carb guy. But I want to look at the role that seed oils, vegetable oils play in diabetes. Is there any connection that you've seen?
Yeah, so I mean, that's an interesting question. As I talked about my background, I'm very interested in nutrition, and probably going to start to do an experiment with the keto diet myself, frankly. But yeah, like my background, yeah.
When you're ready.
Yes, okay. But my background is not really in, I don't have a ton of experience and expertise in diet per se. So I don't want to speculate about that, if that's all right.
Well, and that's okay. Yeah, if it's out of your expertise, I would say if you're looking at diabetes and fat cells and you don't know about ketogenesis, you should know about ketogenesis, because I think it's intricately tied. And I'm not telling you anything new. Ben Bikman. So you're aware that it's out there and you're aware of it. But I would say, as you continue to do your research at your company here, look at the mechanisms that a ketogenic diet helps with. And maybe, I know this isn't going to be great for your bottom line, but maybe you don't need a pharmaceutical solution, or at least the kind of one that you'll be developing, because it'll only be mimicking the effects of what a ketogenic diet could do for people. And it's not a hard diet to implement.
Yeah, so I just meant specifically the consequences of eating seed oils, like you asked. But yeah. And I mean, frankly, my goal, for a business to be successful, obviously you have to make money, but the whole point of this is to get rid of diabetes and have people be healthy. And so our goal is not to sort of remove the need for people to be responsible with what they choose to eat and things like that, right? So that's not the point. So yeah, let's be healthy, and our job is to help people do that in whatever way we can. Yeah.
I'm glad to hear you say that, because a lot of my listeners at the very beginning would go, dude, he's trying to peddle the drug. I'm like, no, it's an option on the table. And I think we need all tools in the toolbox.
Absolutely.
Because if we're going to truly reverse diabetes, I think here's your business plan. And I'm just spitballing it with you here. We're just buds talking
on the, I appreciate it. Yeah.
On here. For me, there needs to be a prescriptive way to get to the reversal of the type 2 diabetes. And so a lot of us have caught on to it through nutrition, but there's other kind of nutrients and supplements and other protocols that can impact your blood sugar and insulin levels that would help heal that, would bring the A1C down. And so I wonder if you guys at your lab develop some kind of a protocol, maybe not necessarily a drug for everybody, but keep that as an option for some people. But that would be the thing that you sell is, hey, look, we will reverse your type 2 diabetes. Come see us and we'll customize a plan for you. Now, it'll be a basic plan for everybody. Some people will need a little more intensive because their A1C is 14. And then someone else has an A1C of 6.5. Okay, you don't have to go as intensive because you can reverse it quickly. But it would be a prescriptiveness with diet, exercise, sauna therapy, HIIT training, and targeted to them. Maybe you run some blood work. Like, I'm envisioning kind of this lab that even doctors could say, all right, I don't know what to do with this patient anymore here. And you guys would be the ones that would fix them.
Yes, I mean, those are really interesting ideas. So, I mean, I don't know how we would go about testing sauna therapy with some of our tools, but
Well,
like,
that's, I mean, there's all kinds of biohacks. Like, there's so many ways. I wear this little ring that lets me track my sleep. Like, there's so
yeah,
many things that are available now that have never been available to consumers. And so if they're available to consumers, they're definitely available to you guys in a lab setting. I don't know. It seems to me people are lost because the ADA, American Diabetes Association, has failed them. Their local doctor has failed them. The so-called diabetes educators, the dietitians, have all failed them. And so they're looking for some kind of a hope. And the Hope Diabetes Clinic sounds pretty awesome to me.
yeah. So, I mean, you asked at the very beginning what our product is, and at this stage, in any biotechnology company at the early stage, their product is information. And
Yeah.
so you're absolutely right, and that's going to be our first product is, hey, what exactly is happening that's wrong at a molecular level, and what are ways that we can fix that, be it through diet, a drug for people who maybe have a genetic predisposition to that particular issue or whatnot. So yeah, exactly. The most
I think
important thing is to figure out what's happening and develop solutions to fix it. Yeah.
I think part of the shift that happened in 1980 wasn't just nutrition. I was a kid in the 80s,
Yeah.
and I remember video games came out, and
Hmm.
we stayed inside. We weren't outside playing as much. We were playing the video games. We weren't exposed to sun as much. There were a lot of things that were suddenly different in American culture, that I think contributed to this as well. So I think having kind of a totality of, all right, let's go back in time 100 years ago. How did those people who were pretty basically free from type 2 diabetes and obesity a decade ago, 1920s, 30s, 40s, what were they doing? And now let's look and mimic what they were doing in a modern kind of society. I know we've got a lot of things that are different. Definitely the processed foods are way different now than they were then, but we could really kind of replicate what's old is new again to get back to pre 1980 diabetes levels.
Yeah. So, I mean, I guess you've got a little bit of an advantage. So I was born in '84. So my personal experience isn't there, but
But your
yeah,
experience is similar in as much as by the time you came of age as a kid, video games,
yeah, yeah,
TV, kids today have devices, they have Netflix, they've got Spotify,
yeah, yeah.
I mean, they're doing all these things inside, and they're not learning some of the old fashioned, like getting dirty, all those microbes that they would have playing in the dirt and eating dirt. Like it matters.
Yeah, it matters. So absolutely, and you brought up microbes and the immune system and things like that, and that plays out with things like type 1 diabetes and other autoimmune disorders that are on the rise in that same time period, like you said. So I've actually got 4 kids, so we go outside and do outdoorsy stuff frequently as well, but yeah, I mean, you're right. I didn't have an iPad or a phone to play games on or whatever. I did have the Nintendo and
Yes.
things, but But yeah, I mean, that's on the rise, and we have to sort of consciously counteract it.
Dude, the year you were born, I got an Atari, and look, we got to play Pong, and we thought it was the coolest thing ever. So,
Yeah, so I was, duck hunt and things like that. But
yes, duck hunt,
yeah.
and then the dog would laugh at you.
Oh, I'm remembering it
Yeah,
now that you say it. Yeah.
that's that ketosis brain, man. It never forgets anything. So,
Okay.
well, let's get into a subject that I think will be very interesting to my audience related to the subject of
Yeah.
diabetes, insulin resistance, which I've already mentioned, but insulin sensitivity, and that's the goal that so many of us are seeking. How do you find that line between insulin resistance and insulin sensitivity? Where does that begin?
So, what do you mean exactly by that? Yeah.
Like when people are trying to heal their body from a high A1C and they're trying to become not diabetic, in other words, curing their type 2 diabetes, it's not going to happen until they go from insulin resistant, which is what type 2 diabetes is in its
Yeah.
worst,
Yeah.
to insulin sensitive. So when do they know that they've reached insulin sensitivity? Are there specific markers they look at? Is it a certain way they feel? Are there definitely physical or mental kind of manifestations of that?
Yeah. So, I mean, your doctors are going to be looking at, decreased HbA1c and but so that's going to be, of course, your average blood glucose levels, um, a measure of that. And that's really what, the original definition of insulin resistance was. This is before the insulin receptor was discovered or any insulin signaling was known. It was just, hey, your blood glucose levels stay high after a meal.
Yeah.
But I mean, in terms of, and I don't know if this is exactly what you're sort of asking about, but um, I guess I'm taking some liberties here with the answer. But yeah, so I mean, inflammation is what you see, with all these different hypotheses about what's causing diabetes. The one common thing that, sort of I noticed as I was uh, studying this and looking into it as I was, sort of planning out, the vision of what my research I wanted it to be, was like you always see inflammation or some immune component,
Yeah.
and this extends across the spectrum of different types of diabetes, whether it's type 1, type 2, Alzheimer's is sort of getting sort of
Yeah.
brought in here, and so I mean, and then conversely, even if you don't have diabetes, any sort of inflammation will also result in insulin resistance. So it's so that seems to be the key that you need to sort of focus on about eliminating, and how
Right.
to go about doing that. I mean, so I know you've had success and people have had success with diet. Diet also seems, I see you're about to say something, so I just have to
Well,
stop and hear it. Yeah.
comes to inflammation, and I agree with you, I think all chronic disease goes back to inflammation, even before insulin. I mean, insulin is a huge part, but it's the chicken or the egg. Was the insulin going up that raised the inflammation, or was it the inflammation that went up that raised the insulin? They both kind of run parallel. When one goes up, the other goes up. When one goes down, the other goes down. So I agree with you. Yeah, I think there are a lot of things you can do to lower inflammation. Obviously, diet is a powerful one, but some of those biohacks I was talking about earlier, just sun exposure, red light therapy, cold thermogenesis. We could go down the line, sauna therapy, all the things that can help with inflammation levels, and it's very easily detectable. HSCRP, IGF-1, homocysteine. I mean, we can go down the list of all the ways to track that. But see, the average consumer has no clue what those things are. They hear inflammation, they go, well, I didn't stub my toe and I don't have a red toe now. And it's like they don't really know what it means chronically to have inflammation. So it's kind of a harder sell. And then insulin kind of is tied to, well, I don't have type 2 diabetes, so I don't have to worry about that. Educating the public on what these terms mean and why they're applicable to everyone is probably a key of your company.